Economic Union are, as we said, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and the Russian Federation. And to discuss the External Affairs Minister's visit to Moscow, I'm joined on the show by Sushil Kumar Singhal. He's a former senior diplomat. Thank you, Ambassador Singhal, for being on the show. What should we make of the External Affairs Minister's visit to Moscow at this juncture, both the significance of it and the timing of it?
Well, it's a very interesting times, as we all know. And the visit of the Honorable External Affairs Minister to Moscow, it has, reaffirmed the ties, as the EAM said in his opening statement. This is one of the most important relationship of India since the World War II, and they have very strong ties in the field, not only diplomatic ties but people-to-people contact, defense, economic relationship is very strong, and the discussion which took place, I think they took place more or less on the expected line that both countries agreed to enhance trade. And of course, Russia has shown the understanding not only about the trade deficit, which is quite big. EM mentioned the figure of $58.5 billion is a trade deficit. And Russia has shown the understanding and willingness to increase the imports from India to bridge the gap. Of course, mostly is because of the large crude oil import by India. And they were discussed about the having projects in the field of energy and other LNG in Far East area, and there was very interesting conversation about this special mechanism and institutional framework to take care of the problems, which has arisen because of the imposition of sanctions on Russia.
Okay, can I stop, Ambassador, can I stop you for a moment? Before we go, I want to deal separately with the issue of tariffs and its, the implications of it. But on the trade imbalance, when you import crude oil from them, when you buy defense equipment from them, so the trade imbalance will continue to be there, right? How can you address the trade imbalance? What can you sell the Russians?
Well, I completely agree with you, because it's a lopsided, and the item which we import is our bulk items, particularly crude oil and the defense. So the major is, of course, at the moment is the crude oil. So they have identified the areas. I would not say that it will go or finish. This trade imbalance will go overnight. But once they start addressing, so they'll find ways. I think they have already mentioned, like pharmaceutical, agriculture products, textile. These are the three areas which has been identified and talked about. In addition, we are talking about the joint projects where they will be, in the Far East. So the investments will go. There will be joint investments. And similarly, I think we'll talk about the investments in India by the Russian companies. So the joint production, I think, is the way. Maybe it will be in defense, will be in other areas, other areas of economy, maybe agriculture, textile, as we talked about, and maybe electronics. Why not the electronics? India is becoming a major power in the field of electronics. And the computers, hardware and the software. So I think these are the new areas, in my view, which will emerge and will help in reducing the trade imbalance. It will not happen, it will not go overnight, but the idea is, I think, is to reduce the gap, which will be a long-term strategy.
All right, let's talk about the US tariffs and the Russia energy trade. Now, this issue was addressed at this meeting between the two leaders, and interestingly, in that press conference, if you watched it, the External Affairs Minister was asked by a journalist that US tariffs have been imposed, so what do you have to say on that? So he said, honestly, I'm quite perplexed by that decision, because we are not the biggest importer of Russian oil. China is. They haven't imposed tariffs on them yet. He said the EU or the European countries, Europe is the biggest importer of LNG from there. He said, even if you talk about the trade scaling up, some southern countries since 2023 have scaled up more. So you have India in that sense hasn't done enough to scale up trade. So the imposition of tariffs, he said he's perplexed by it. But do the Russians understand the Indian position on the matter?
Oh yes, they do understand, and that's why they also have criticized this so-called imposition of 25%. I mean, they are proposed suggesting Americans are suggesting that from 28th August, whether it will happen or not, we don't know. But even the Russians have criticized, and they have said that they don't understand why they are doing it, and they also mentioned that India is not the only country which is importing from them. So Russia themselves have accepted, and the EAM used the right term, that he's perplexed. And the explanation which is being offered by the American side, it seems to be illogical when they're talking about that India is they're imposing the tariff on India because India is they say themselves that is the second largest, it's not the main importer. But China is not. They were not imposing. First they said, well, we have some other concerns. It's not in our interest. Then they said, India is taking benefit. That is a term they are using. And they are not willing to address on European Union. That, what European Union is doing, they don't want to talk about. And forget about that, the European Union, even themselves. Because USA continues to import a large amount of, uranium
from them,
and other items. And they don't want to talk about it. But as far as Russia is concerned, they said that we are with India, and they hope that India will continue, as our government position is that it's a sovereign decision, and these are the economic decisions which are taken in the interest of the economy, and we'll buy from wherever it suits us. And they have talked about a special mechanism and institutional arrangement to ensure that the supplies from Russia are not disrupted. So this is Russians are showing great understanding, of the situation.
Okay, and but the critics of this argument will argue that it's the whole relationship, though the External Affairs Minister calls it the steadiest relationship since the World War II, but things have changed. Aren't they changing? I mean, we suddenly hiked the buying oil from Russia because the world wasn't buying because of sanctions. We were getting it cheaper. So wasn't it transactional in a sense?
Well, you can say that in transactional, but the USA, as our government has said, and also the American side has also accepted, that Biden administration or the American government themselves, they encouraged India. That India should buy their crude from Russia to stabilize the global market, because they didn't want to pay extra for that. So they were well aware what is happening, and they were in fact facilitating. And now suddenly they want to turn around and say that what India is doing is not correct, and we are supporting their so-called war machine without justifying the imports by European Union themselves, who are actually supporting Ukraine, and then they're saying that we are not contributing, which is completely wrong in their part. So
it's plain hypocrisy. I mean, that's what it is. But as you being a career diplomat understand it better than others, that world in geopolitics, it's not really principled stance that nations take. It is more of interests that they go by. And right now, that's where the American interests lie. To arm twist Russia, it's got more to do with Russia than to do with India, to get them to some kind of negotiating leeway.
That's very interesting. I was just saying here, they are not doing anything with Russia. They are not increasing any, tariffs on Russia. So if they want to arm twist Russia, then they should impose more sanctions, or raise the tariff on them. They are still, enjoying 10% tariff.
Right. So Trump's issuing.
It just does not make sense.
Yeah, he's using the carrot and the stick policy there,
Yeah,
and because he knows that he has limited leeway there.